ladies and gentlemen, my name is Solus Convoy, and I'm back with another review. I'm doing another Newage Legends class figure, but this one's a bit different from the previous two I reviewed. Sludge being, or Behemoth really, being a very new release, and Vanishing Point and the Nest being a more, a bit ago, but not too long ago release. This figure is one of Newage's earliest. Welcome to Newage H08Y Tata Transportation. Or Transportation Tata. I really don't know if the order offends him or if it matters, and I nearly knocked him over. Let's take a look at his box. As you guys can see, there's some box art depicting a yellow Ratchet, and his label is here, H08Y Transportation Tata. So that's the correct order. One thing to notice about this box is that the Newage Legendary Heroes logo that is usually on the front is actually printed in Chinese, and there's a reason for that. Unlike a lot of other Transformers toys, especially in the third-party scene, this figure is not based on a character in media, it is not based on a previous toy, but it is actually based on real-life Beijing taxis, which used Nissan vignettes. This was a reference by Newage's designers towards taxis that they may have grown up with and were near and dear to their hearts, or they just thought it was a funny use of the Nissan vignette mold. So I'm going to get right into the review. I picked this figure up as a novelty. I just couldn't get over how great that was. So, but I'm going to review it as objectively as possible. So let's get to work. Starting off with the sculpt, I think there's a lot of good here. The head sculpt is very nice, right? It's very nice. I like his head sculpt a lot. I don't think it's perfect, but I don't really think it's bad, especially for older Newage. I think it's a really nice head sculpt. It doesn't have a ton of character, but it does look really nice, and he's too small for alt faces. That's not really a complaint here. But he looks good. He looks good. But once you zoom out and you look at the whole picture, really, and really zoomed in, there's something about this guy that I have to get out of the way right off the bat. Those forearms are... They're something. Yeah, I mean, they're bulbous and huge. They don't really hide themselves well, and they don't really do a whole lot. Not even for the transformation. There's just a lot of mass, and they're very simple and simplistic. And this is older Newage, so I can give it a pass. But they really don't. They are really from a side profile. They just absolutely demolish the bicep, and when posed, they also don't look terrific. That's not bad. But proportionally, this figure's got some quirks. I think it's not perfect. The legs are fine. The side view of the chest is where everything starts to fall apart. I can see from the side. That's crazy. The back is relatively clean. He has like a fun little asymmetrical backpack, which is always kind of interesting and fresh take. And then his chest is it's not perfect. I think this is definitely one of Newage's less clean figures. But considering how good the alt mode is, we'll get to that later. I can give the goofiness of the sculpt and its age a pass, but I really do think that even compared to stuff like Jazz and Prowl, which are older than this figure, who I own in various repaints, he's kind of rough. He's kind of rough. I don't think this is a thing I would have picked up if it wasn't for the pure childhood joy level novelty that his alt mode brings to me. So starting off with posability, let's look at this ball jointed head that gets you past 90 degrees vertical, actually, so he can look way up. You can get, actually the side to side is pretty limited, very limited. It's like 5 degrees, and of course ball joints can give you the full 360. Moving over to the shoulders, they're just universal ball joint shoulders. Very simple, 90 out, 360 around. These chest assemblies could rock, but that's not a joint. They're just not secure. That's not a joint. Bicep swivel, 360, 90 degree elbow. Kind of disappointing. There's a lot of real estate here, and yeah. So there's a wrist swivel, but that's one of my first issues with this toy. This wrist swivel is not fun. And it's not tight, actually. It doesn't look that tight. You can see I'm not having that much resistance, but This is more of an accessories issue, but I'm going to get right into it. That peg is way too short, and because of how short the peg is, it's not actually a secure connection, but the peg is short, so there's a lot of resistance when you try to swivel it, and it's not really a fun time. The issue is that it'll pop out before you finish a rotation if you put too much force on it instead of actually swiveling. So it's more like an articulation issue because of an accessory being kind of goofy. Coming over to the waist, there is a waist rotation, but it's kind of obstructed by the backpack, so you have to like move the backpack back because it's not really tabbed in, and then you get a full 360 waist. He has hips that go forward 90, backwards like 75 because of the backpack again. And this is where it gets wacky. He's a thigh swivel, just a regular thigh swivel that goes 360. And then below the knee bend for transformation, he has a swivel here. And sometimes when you try to use the thigh swivel, if you try to engage the thigh swivel from down here, this time it works fine, but sometimes you can actually end up swiveling the bottom half of the leg because I think it's a bit looser, but I'm not really sure. They're very close. 90-degree knee, as I just showed, for the time, it's whatever. And coming down to the ankles, you actually have two joints here. One of them's a transformation joint, but regardless, you have a dedicated ankle tilt that gets you good 90 degrees, fantastic. And then you have a toe tilt, but it's a sideways toe tilt, so like you already have an ankle tilt that's kind of redundant, but it'll allow you to get reverse ankle tilt that doesn't look very good and doesn't work very well because, as you can see, this is not an even surface, so it's kind of not really there. But yeah, posability is very much okay. He's very average. There's nothing really like jaw-dropping. For his time, I think he was fine. If he came out now, people will call him a brick. Standards have changed. But yeah, he also has a bunch of accessories, actually a lot more than your current Newage figure would get. So that's probably one thing this toy has over most modern Newage figures. But unfortunately, for these accessories, well, let's get into the stinkers already. The fists, the hand pegs are too short. This is one of Newage's first figures, I think, with alternate hands, and they clearly did not know how long to make the hand pegs because these pegs are just too short. They pop out way too easily. So he has these closed fist holding hands. He has these open hands. He has two of each, by the way, so you can do either. And that's not very pretty. They don't do that anymore, and they don't shape their open hands like this. This is more of just like an open palm, but Newage's open hands have a bit of a, well, I can just show you one right now, right? Modern open hands have like this kind of a aspect to them where they're kind of grasping ever so slightly, so you can fake a grasp motion, but this is very much just an open hand. So sculpt on that isn't very great. The pointing finger hand, I don't have my David out right now, so I can't show you his version, but this is also a lot worse. The sculpt is really rough, and I think for the better of everyone involved, nope, it focused. The thumb's like a bubble. It's like a bubble. The thumb is like literally a bubble. The sculpt is pretty atrocious here. So this is clearly Newage's first attempt at all hands. I think it is their first attempt. It's not looking hot, boys. I can't be honest. I gotta be honest with you. It's not looking good. Into other accessories, we have like Ironhide's nitrogen gas shooter in black. Only one when you need to. That's unfortunate. So you can pose him shooting, I guess if he was Ratchet it would be medical foam, but since this guy's a taxi, you can pose him shooting like taxi bills at people. Then you have a more Ratchet ass accessory, which is a repair tool of some sort. However, this is probably the worst of the bunch. Yeah, that's nice. Has no friction whatsoever with either hand. This is amateur hour stuff. You can put his fist back in, and then you can give him his gun. And the gun is fine. I like the thing about the gun, how because of the sculpt and the fact that it has a peg here, which is used for weapon storage, positive for that. However, they didn't account for the fact that you can't push the gun all the way in. If you do try to push it more, it'll pop the wrist out, and you end up with like this seam or gap when he's holding it that just looks ugly from a side view. So yeah, you can cheat it by making it like that, but then you end up with a wrong, like a sideways elbow joint. So yeah, all around not looking hot. There's a lot of accessories here, but the hands are just, the pointing hands are butt ugly. The open hands are not as efficient as the modern open hands, and they are also butt ugly because of the giant gap in the middle. And the fists are fine, except for the fact that the pegs are too short and they fall out. So almost every accessory here is a flaw of some sort, except for Ironhide's gas gun. So that's all I'm going to say about accessories. I'm going to get him. Actually, no. I'm going to hit some size comparisons. So here he is with Hasbro G2 Legends Megatron. Here he is with my last review, which is Newage Sludge, where you can see towers over him even when posed. And then here he is with Earthrise, or I think this is Generation Selects DK3 Breaker, who I got at Ross recently. I'm going to get him transformed, do the alt mode, and then just do the final thoughts from there. Alright, let's get Legends class Tata's size comparisons out of the way in alt mode. So here he is with Hasbro's G2 Legends Core Megatron, Earthrise DK3 Breaker, and for a more topical comparison, Newage's Shattered Glass Grimlock. So, very cute, very tiny, size of an old Legends figure in alt mode. More dense though. So this alt mode is truly beautiful. I think it's a very nice interpretation of a classic Beijing taxi. It's got a lot of beautiful painted detail. You can see that wonderful ticket, 1 yuan per ride, I guess. And then taxi symbol, fully painted. All of these details are all painted. They're all perfectly done. It really brings the whole thing together. It really feels like a tiny model taxi. The seam lines aren't too apparent, and they're hidden kind of well, I'd say. It's not bulbous, and it doesn't bulge from the sides from kibble or anything. Overall, it looks great. I love the rims. I really love a lot about I love the sculpted door handles. There's so much effort put into this alt mode. And even if the robot mode's compromised, really makes up for it. I slapped that Autobot logo on myself thanks to Show Z's included stickers. Not with this figure, because I had to buy the second hand. It's very rare now because of how old it is. But the alt mode's fantastic. The reason this is so short is because there's literally nothing wrong with this alt mode. It even has weapon storage. Basically, you can store his gun in the back here because there's a peg hole. So if you can maneuver the gun perfectly and aim it perfectly, you can actually store it. I'm not doing it again because on camera it is a nightmare. But he does have weapon storage, which a lot of modern 3P figures have avoided because, you know, ton of hands, ton of accessories. Nobody's going to ask you to store like the immobilizer or something. So it's a very older release in that sense. But going into final thoughts, I think the alt mode here is fantastic. The alt mode is dated and janky, and even by older standards is not great. I understand why there was so much relief when Magic Square released their Ironhide, because this doesn't cook. I don't think this was, they really needed to put this in the kitchen more. Even compared to their Jazz and Prowl, it feels kind of disappointing in robot mode. But I bought this entirely for the novelty of having a perfectly dedicated transforming taxi that's based on the alternate mode. I just think it looks really cute as a taxi, and it basically defines its whole existence as being a cute taxi. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about the final thoughts for this figure. It's a fun novelty. Don't pay exorbitant prices for it. It'll show up for cheap eventually. There's not that much demand. It's a very niche figure. I managed to get it secondhand from a cool guy on the Show DZ Discord. So definitely do not pay super high for this. You'll see listings for super high on AliExpress or other e-stores because it's old, out of stock, and hard to find, and was already a limited run. But there's not a lot of demand. You can find this for cheap if you really want it. So yeah, that's it for my review. Hope to see you guys next time. And until then, peace out.